When we bring a motion before this House, we do so because it's important to us, important to the people we represent. We bring motions to raise awareness, to demand action, to tell an important story. And as elected representatives, and knowing that it takes a certain amount of ego to do this job, we always feel that it's us personally who are best placed to tell that story. Well, tonight, Cahirlock, I readily admit that I am not best placed to tell this particular story, nor is any member of this House, because if the rules of the Oireachtas allowed it, I think we would all be happy to cede our time in this debate to Kate Corrigan, who was in Leinster House today and I think joins us in the public gallery. Anyone who was in the AV room today at a hearing organised by my colleague Pearse Doherty would not need to hear another single word other than those uttered by Kate to be convinced of the merits of the motion before us. They would be as determined as any member of the Enough is Enough campaign group to ensure that there are no further delays in upgrading what is Ireland's most dangerous road, the A5, and that the outstanding schemes on the linking N2 are advanced without delay. Kate Corrigan gave us the human reality of the statistics that we will hear tonight. Kate's son Nathan, alongside Peter Finnegan and Peter McNamee, were killed on St Stephen's Day, Boxing Day as it's known, in Tyrone 2021 when they were involved in a crash on the A5 just a short distance from the Corrigans' home. The three men left behind devastated families. Kate told of the gap that Nathan's loss has created, a gap that will never be filled except with sadness and heartache. And they were just 3 of the 50 people who have died on the A5 since 2005. 10 of those deaths occurred between October 2021 and October 2022. The trajectory is clear. The fatalities will continue unless this road is upgraded. From a road safety perspective alone, there is no need for debate. The A5 must be upgraded. From an economic perspective, it is no accident that it is the communities along the entire route of the N2 and A5 that suffer the highest levels of unemployment, the highest levels of emigration, the highest levels of deprivation and the lowest levels of investment, both public and private. Of course, all of that isn't down to a single road, but that road and the lack of action on it are certainly symptomatic. And we can, of course, discuss the reasons for the current situation. We could discuss the historic legacy of partition, the fact that governments in Dublin, London and Stormont had one thing in common, and that was the systemic underinvestment in the border region and the northwest in particular. We could discuss the archaic planning system in the north that has allowed what are a very tiny number of objectors to delay and frustrate the progress that is quite clearly in the common good. We could discuss the underfunding historically and currently of British governments in respect of infrastructure projects in the north, in underinvestment that has been exacerbated, ironically, in the time since the Good Friday Agreement. What we can do in this House, though, is take action where we can, and that is in directing government to act upon their previous commitment. I welcome the fact that government have indicated that they will support this motion tonight. That is an important first step, but it must be followed by government action, and the government's action in the first instance must be a categoric statement that it will ensure that the 50% commitment in respect of funding for this project will be adhered to. This is more and must be more than saying the right thing. It has to be about doing the right thing, and rhetoric in respect of the A5, of course, will only count for something if it is also matched by action in respect of the N2 road linkage. The regions that are not served and cannot be serviceable in the short term by public transport need investment in our road networks in order to ensure that we can save lives and that we can ensure that never again will someone like Kate Corrigan have to come and bare their soul before the members of this House. Let's make sure that in this instance it wasn't in vain. Government, we appeal to you, Minister in particular, to support this motion, but more importantly to act upon it.
And I welcome the fact that we can discuss this, Minister, tonight. A number of weeks ago, I sat in a house in Newton Stewart. I sat with Patsy McSorley, who had just lost his wife, a wife of 50 years. His daughter was there, his granddaughter was there, and in the corner was what you would call a little shrine. Flowers, cross, a framed photograph with that bright smile, a woman all dressed, happy-go-lucky person who lived life to the full, but who left a huge emptiness, not just in that room, but in the hearts of all those who knew her. And unfortunately, Julia McSorley, even though she was one of the last victims so far in terms of the A5, she hasn't been the only one. A number of others died with her on that day. And as my colleague says, up to 50 people have died on that road since 2006. Earlier today, as the Enough is Enough campaign gave their presentation, I think everybody who was in the room was seriously affected when we had the presentation from Kate and what it meant to be woken up that morning, for the PSNI to be at your door and telling you that your son of 20 years of age is one of the latest victims to the A5. And we could stand here today, and especially somebody from the North West, and tell you how important it is to unlock the potential of Donegal, how important it is to unlock the potential of Derry in the North West region, why it's so important for this government to recommit to what they committed to in the St Andrews Agreement back in 2006 when they agreed to co-finance this road. But all of those arguments have been made. The most powerful argument is that this is a road that is a killer. This road does not discriminate between young and old, rich or poor, north or south, nationalists or unionists. It is a killer. Too many families have lost their lives on this road. And we're only talking about the most extreme cases. We also heard that every fourth day, on average, there is a serious accident reported to the PSNI in that road. Not the small tips or hits, but a serious accident reported in that road. So today we have a motion here, and I'm glad that the government are not opposing it, because this House needs to speak with one voice brought together by all of the victims who have spoke out, who have told of their own experience of what this road has done to them, how this road has destroyed their family, has caused so much pain and hurt and anger. It is for us in this House, right across the political divide, to say enough is enough. That we are as committed as you are to making sure that this road is delivered. That the commitment that we gave in the St Andrews Agreement in 2006 will be one that this government delivers on, or whatever government makes up this House in the future. That the principle of 50% of funding is one that we made in 2006, and it is one that we will keep now. And that we will do everything in our power, in whatever way we can, to ensure that there is a positive outcome in relation to the determination in terms of the inquiry that has been held in Omagh in the last number of weeks. And that is the least we can do. And as politicians and as people who listen to those who have fallen victim, the families, it is the decent thing to do. We know the history of this road. My colleague talked about those small number of people who are objecting to it, how it's been frustrated time and time again. But we're at a point where there will be a decision made by the inquiry to the department, and a decision made by the department within the next year. It is then time to build the road. So I'm asking the government, and I'm asking you in particular, speaking on behalf of the government, to join with me and say enough is enough. That we hear you, we hear the campaign led by Tyrone GA, who lost too many of their stars, of their young and up-and-coming stars to this road, and who finally, they said enough is enough, and who joined this campaign group, who formed this campaign group to spearhead this campaign. So I'm asking you, Minister, to join with us, to say enough is enough, to say that we are committed to what we agreed in 2006, to say that we will live up to that responsibility of co-financing this road, that we will do whatever we can with the incoming executive when it is restored, and the British Government, who is a party to that agreement, to make sure that the A5 is upgraded. And also the crucial link roads in Donegal from Letterkenny to Lifford and the N2 need to be part of that overall project.
First of all, I would like to welcome the A5 Enough is Enough group who are present in the gallery with us this evening and commend them for their campaigning for the long overdue upgrade to the A5. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to pay my respects to the many families who have been bereaved as a result of accidents on this treacherous road. And I want to commend all the speakers who outlined this issue in detail in the AV room earlier today. And I want to also especially mention Kate Corrigan, who spoke so eloquently and shared with us a heart-wrenching account of the loss of her son Nathan, who died as a result of a road traffic accident on the A5. And Kate shared her immense loss with us. And we just have to hope that, so many families have experienced this so far, no more should have to go through what she and others have gone through. Everything must be done to ensure that this death trap is addressed. We were heard today that on average every 4 days there's a serious accident taking place on this road. This cannot be allowed to continue. The Government must honour its original commitment to fund 50% of the cost of the A5 upgrade and take all the necessary steps to ensure that the N2, the Clontibret to the Border road scheme and the Castleblaney to Ardee road scheme are funded and delivered as speedily as possible also. The A5 upgrade was first announced in 2007 in order to transform a dangerous single-lane road into a much safer dual carriageway. It remains an unsafe road with an increasing number of fatalities in recent years, and people young and old continue to lose their lives on this route, leaving devastated families and communities behind. The Government originally committed to funding 50% of this project, a critically important piece of infrastructure, but withdrew this commitment in 2011. The National Development Plan indicates a current commitment of 75 million, which is well below the original 400 million, which was 50% of the original cost at 800 million, let alone the current estimated overall cost, which is 1.6 billion. The N2 Clontibret to the Border road scheme, a vital artery through the central border region to the northwest, was originally commenced in 2008, suspended in 2012. And it's an important link to the A5 and has been identified as necessary for road safety. Restarted in 2018 and a new preferred route corridor was published in early 2021. The project then entered its phase 3 design and environmental evaluation, but no funding was received in 2022. And this project was suspended once again. The Castleblaney to Ardee section of the N2 road scheme received funding of 600,000 in 2023, but this has proven insufficient to allow design work to continue, and consultant engineers had to be asked to stop work on this project. It's a fact that the continued delays to these schemes are costing lives. A commitment has to be given that no more lives will be lost by further delays. These projects are also extremely important in terms of the social and economic development of the North West and the Border Corridor region. The National Development Plan recognises the A5 as one of the, and I quote, strategic investment priorities for a more connected island, and identifies the need for both sections of the N2 road scheme as key to supporting the development of the border region. The Northern and Western Regional Assembly also include these projects as a policy objective to support the growth ambitions for the region in the Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy. If an extended delay is experienced, the cost of these schemes will increase, and surveys and investigations and design work will need to be repeated at further additional costs. Minister, further delays to the commencement of these projects will cost more lives and have a negative effect on the social and economic development of this region. These projects must be advanced and completed as quickly as possible to enhance road safety, to save lives and help develop the social and economic well-being of the North West and the border region. Since 2006, more than 50 lives have been lost on the A5, 10 deaths occurring between October of 2021 and October of 2022 alone. We cannot wait any longer. We must act to save lives and protect families from further heartbreak. So the Government must honour its original commitment to fund 50% of the cost of the A5 upgrade and take all the necessary steps to ensure that the N2 Both the Contibber to the Border scheme and the Castleblaney to RD Road scheme are funded and delivered as speedily as possible. There cannot be any more delays or any more lives lost. And I am glad that the Government have indicated that they will not oppose the motion here before us this evening. But more importantly, the Government need to step up to the mark and put in place the funding required to deliver on these vitally important infrastructure projects.
Minister, sometimes, and all too often, systems that are in place fail our people. And the planning system in the north of Ireland has profoundly failed the people of the northwest. That's Donegal, Derry, Tyrone, I'm going to say Fermanagh, Sligo, Cavan, Monaghan too. It's failed us. There was an overwhelming desire to have equality of access, of infrastructure for our people with the rest of the island. And when you look at the map, you can see, and rightly so, motorways and train links connecting communities across the island. And as you know, there's a huge deficit in our region. And the system utterly failed us. It allowed a small minority of voices to hold back, to prevent, to block what was in the overwhelming good of all of our people. And that is a system that's not fit for purpose. And sometimes when systems fail, it takes the voices of ordinary people who never wanted to have to be in that position, but it takes their powerful voices to make the change. And on the night of the launch of Enough is Enough, there were some powerful speeches. One of them was played back to us earlier on from Peter Canavan, the great Tyrone Gaelic footballer. And Peter talked about a memory that never left him, and he's from that area, where a beloved member of staff in the local school, she was knocked down, and they seen her knocked down on the side of the road. That never left him. And tonight and earlier, we had Kate Corrigan. Kate shouldn't have to come here and tell her story of the devastation her family has experienced because of the loss of her son. Shouldn't have to do that. But I said to her earlier that sometimes when somebody tells their story, a victim, somebody who's been utterly failed, that they are far more powerful than all the MPs, all the TDs, and all the MLAs that you could put there. That the voice of a person has been failed. When they speak out, they speak to the decency of most people, and they shame us that the system that's in place has failed them. But it has to stop. And we have to now make sure that the A5 project proceeds. And I'm pleased that the government has supported this motion tonight, because it means that the commitment that was made those years ago for a 50-50 funding of this road is now back on the table again. That's what this motion means tonight. And that's an important message when we get these planning issues finally resolved. And it's thanks to the communities who've rose up in Tyrone, and they're backed by all the communities in the counties around them 100%. I also want to talk about the projects in Donegal, Minister. The 10T project, the road and route improvement project, because they've faced delays too. Ballybuffet-Stranorla bypass, delayed for years. The Letterkenny relief road, delayed for years. You have a situation where you have logjam, particularly in Letterkenny, but also in Ballybuffet and Stranorla, because of the failure to deliver roads projects, because the systems in place have failed our people. But there's finally momentum there too. This 10T project has been well led by the National Road Design Office. And of course, they want to connect Letterkenny through a dual carriageway through Manor Cunningham into Lifford. So it's all about making sure that we have the full benefit of the A5 when it happens for the people of Donegal with the 10T improvement project, and also, of course, for Monaghan and Meath and Louth and Cavan in terms of the N2 and all the related roads connecting. Our people deserve equality of access, and the systems have failed our people, north and south. But there's real momentum now. There's really capable people driving the project in Donegal, and we can speak, me and Pierce Doherty, with real authority about that. Very capable people. They've got a great plan, and they've submitted that business plan to government, and we need government to get behind it. So that's what this motion also says tonight. So the final comment is that our people are united in Donegal, Tyrone, Derry, Fermanagh, Sligo, Cavan, Monaghan. We're united with one voice to say that we want the same access, the same citizenship, the same respect as everybody else in every...
3.5 and 3.
Gurmina Magat a Chairloch agus Ara dús bháil an fáilte chu raibh an grúpa feachtasaíochta tá tacan seo go blá clia inniu chun an feachtas atá acab a chur an seo faoi bhráid na Dáil agus a sin fíor hábhachtach. Ara, I first of all want to welcome the campaign group for bringing their campaign here, for allowing us to have the privilege to hear them speak. And we often have presentations in the AV room, but to be honest, Minister, I have never been at a briefing in the AV room that has been as touching and as moving as the presentation that I heard today when the Enough is Enough campaign group spoke in the AV room. And there's a number of things I think that really stood out to me. And one was really to hear the impact that the road has had on every part of the community, and that when the campaign group was formed, that those involved in the campaign group went into a meeting and noticed that this person, another person and another person were all really impacted by the road in such a devastating way that each family had their own devastating story to tell and to share, and that is what spurred them on in relation to this campaign. And of course, I've heard my colleagues speak here earlier in relation to the very, very moving story that Kate Corrigan told today, and how she really described how her life was changed forever as a result of the death of her son on this road. And the way she told us so very, very clearly that the work that she is doing on this campaign, and I can see it in the passion from all those people who spoke here today, is to ensure that no other family gets that devastating knock on the door, that no other family has to endure the pain from the devastating news that she was told on that day. And of course, Minister, we know that the reality is that far too many families have lost a loved one on the road, and we've heard the numbers, but the reality is that every single one of those numbers, there's a family, there's a friend group, there is a community that is utterly devastated as a result of that. And the fact that we actually have the ability to transform this, the fact that we actually have the ability to transform these communities, to transform the lives of people, to actually save lives by doing the work on this road really just shows that it is absolutely unthinkable not to take the action that is needed. And earlier today, I had the opportunity to speak to a friend of mine from Tyrone, who explained to me the real impact of the road in her growing up. And she said as a child, she was terrified of the road because she was told how dangerous that road is. But that fear continues on to this day now as an adult, as she drives that road, and the real fear that she has when she is travelling on the road. Minister, I know that you understand this and you understand the importance in relation to this. And one of the figures that stood out to me is that we heard earlier today that every 4 days there's an actually serious accident, but that if we get this road delivered, that we can actually change that completely, because it is clear, Minister, that the most important thing here is that we save lives.
Deputy.
Minister, I'd like to welcome people in the gallery from the A5 campaign, Enough is Enough. As a Dub, I've been travelling to Derry for many decades. My journey on the A5 started many years ago on my first visit to Derry for the Bloody Sunday Justice campaign. In those days, we didn't stay in hotels or B&Bs, but the people of Derry opened their homes to us to enable us to stay up and support them in their fight for justice. And that trip led me to meeting friends who I still visit every year, sometimes several times a year, using the A5, starting at Auchnacloy, through Almas, Traban, and on to Derry. And it is absolutely one of the most dangerous roads I've ever driven on. And we're always very conscious when we drive on that road. And 8 years ago, we discovered my wife's birth mother, Mary Ellen, who sadly passed away this month, lived in Derry, and this led us to travel up to Derry pretty much on a bi-weekly basis. And it brings me back, in the early days we used to brag that the roads in the north were always far superior to those in the south, but that certainly cannot be the case now in relation to the A5 or indeed the A1, which we also use regularly. They're both dangerous and need to be upgraded. And I recently listened to Deputy Park McLaughlin and Deputy Pearse Doherty talk about the A5, and to be honest with you, I didn't know this statistic. I mean, jaw dropped when I heard that 47 people have lost their lives on that road in the last number of years, and most recently, I think the most tragic one of them all was the 3 members of the same family recently who lost their lives just outside Knocknancloy. And that's 47 families that have lost a loved one, a brother, a father, a mother, a sister, an aunt and uncle, and friends, and lives that can't be replaced. I welcome the Irish Government's and the Minister's continued commitment to the upgrade of this road, and I would urge that changes in the costs that, due to delays, are fully met. We know that costs are not in any way near what they were initially thought, and that must not be a barrier to this development. I finally urge to those people who are objecting to the project and who have held it up to work with the community and to ensure that this upgrade happens. There should be no one who has any doubt that lives have been lost, families devastated, and others have had life-changing injuries. There should also be no doubt that this upgrade will save lives. Gora Magat, and thank you again for coming down.
A5, enough is enough. Look, that's literally the message that has to be agreed across this House. Look, we can go through and we can talk about the fact that planning in the north has been disastrous. Obviously, a small number of objectors have been able to hold up this particular project. We know the issues in relation to partition, obviously underinvestment in border areas, and particularly in the northwest. We could talk about regional imbalance till tomorrow morning, and probably longer. And we know that it's an absolute necessity from a financial point of view to open this part of Ireland. You know, that goes without saying. But the fact is, we're dealing with a case of, since 2006, we have over 50 people have died on this stretch of road. 10 have died between October 21 and October 22. In fairness, Kate Corrigan has put it absolutely straightforward. It'd be a lot better if she was here, as Deputy Carthy and others have said, to speak to us from the point of view of the devastation of losing Nathan and all those other people that have lost family members across the board. That's the reality. That is our failure to deliver this project has led to that particular set of circumstances. So we have control over where we are now. Minister, I appreciate what you've said. It sounds hopeful in relation to government commitments. The fact that you're obviously not opposing this and what you're talking about does sound like we are going to have a shared island type commitment. And I would like to see that there would be the money where your mouth is, similar to what has been seen as regards some of the other projects, and I'm thinking in relation to my own constituency, and I really think we need to see this as soon as possible. But what does frighten me, and where the narrow water bridge seems to be in a better place, is you spoke you spoke here very eloquently, but I'll also say you spoke very positively in relation to, obviously, the planning conditions in Donegal, and that you saw those projects moving on that are absolutely necessary in relation to the link-in roads with the A5. You spoke of Clontibbret to the border, but you also spoke in relation to the N2, and I'm talking Castleblaney to RD. But the problem with that is myself, Deputy Carthy, Deputy Tully, and I'm sure anyone else that's interested in that particular part of the world has had talks, negotiations, has had a huge amount of correspondence with both the Minister and with TII. And I think we've all got this same answer. An allocation of €600,000 was made to Monaghan County Council, who are obviously the lead, for the N2 RD to south of Castleblaney bypass scheme in 2023 to meet project commitments up to March 2023. The scheme is currently suspended in Phase 3 design and environmental evaluation phase of TII's project management guidelines. We know we have a whole issue in relation to our old planning process ourselves and how projects are delivered upon. But what we need to see is, hopefully, that commitment that you've made in relation to the A5, but we need to not only see or not only hear positive words, but we need to see delivery in relation to these particular parts of the project, so we can deliver something that is absolutely safe. And that is what the people of that particular part of the world, that's what the people who are here from the campaign group in the gallery deserve. And Minister, I would like to think that whoever is going to do the finish up here is going to come through with an absolute solemn promise that there will be delivery across the board for this entire.
Now to conclude, Deputy Conway-Walsh and Deputy Carthy.
And at the outset, I want to commend the Enough is Enough campaign. I want to thank my colleague, Pearse Doherty, for ensuring we had the opportunity to hear Niall McKenna, Brendan Hurl, Plunkett Nugent and Peter Canavan today, and above all, Kate Corrigan. It was really, and I know said by one of my colleagues earlier on, it was one of the most moving contributions I've ever heard in the AV room. Her heartbreaking words as she spoke about her beloved son Nathan were profound and unforgettable. Nathan, with his friends Peter Finnegan, Peter McNamee, are no longer with us because of the failure to upgrade the N5. 17 years and almost 50 deaths later since the St Andrews Agreement promised the delivery of the A5 upgrade. That is aside from the life-changing injuries suffered by people after the road accidents that have occurred. I welcome the fact that the government are supporting this motion here tonight, but it must be translated into the 50% of the funding to fund the A5 in its entirety as promised. I also want to commend Tyrone GAA for their dedication to this campaign. I really think they have made a difference here. It's been 6,000 days, we heard, and millions have been spent, but still no upgrade. How much are the lives of almost 50 people worth? How much is one life? Unfortunately, Kate Corrigan and her family know the answer to that. Today must be the day we assure Kate and all the other bereaved families that no other family will have to endure the suffering that she is living with every day. The collective voice going out from this House tonight must lead to action. And I'm not going to go through every road in Mayo, Cairhirla, but I live in Belmullet in North Mayo, and we have known tragedy and multiple tragedies and loss from road traffic accidents. We know what it's like to be at the end of the line for investment in roads, and anyone who has travelled the R312 from Belmullet to Castlebar will bear testament to that, as will anybody who travels the N5 through Roscommon. They will know that empty promises are just that, empty. This is aside from what was said today by my own colleague Pádraig McLaughlin in the AB room when he described the planning process as absolutely dysfunctional. Again, I commend all those involved in the Enough is Enough campaign. We cannot now say we didn't know. The human cost of the lack of progress has been laid before us. I'm not going to talk about the economic or social cost, because the human cost that was outlined to us today has to be the driver for this road starting as quickly as possible. The human cost of the lack of progress has been laid before us, as I said, and for that I thank all of you here tonight. No stone must be left unturned to deliver the upgrade on the A5 in its entirety. Very
much, Deputy Conway-Walsh. Deputy McCarthy to conclude, please.
Cairhirla, I just want to again reiterate our thanks to the Enough is Enough campaign group, formed by County Tyrone GA, and it's not often a Monaghan deputy will take to his feet to commend County Tyrone GA for much of anything, but in this occasion I absolutely will. Minister, that's a map of Ireland's rail network. Quite repeated on many occasions, it is very clear that there is a huge gap in the corner. And that's important to note in the context of this debate, because firstly, it sets out the reality for people who live along and within the northwest and border regions. The public transport in most instances isn't an option. And the improvements that you have referenced that are welcomed in the communities do not even begin to address the public transport deficiencies. But it's also important in the context of understanding that without any rail network, it means that the roads and the primary roads actually have a higher proportion of freight vehicles than other roads that are and other regions that actually have rail transportation. And that then of course then leads to an increase in the risk of travelling those roads, and it reinforces the need to have an upgraded and modern standard of road network. This is a map, it's not a great map, it's the best I could find at short notice, of the motorway network across the island of Ireland. And again, it's as if the border region and the northwest simply don't exist. And this has a profound economic impact, and has had a profound economic impact for the regions that have been deprived that connectivity. And again, that has been well outlined tonight. And I think it's important to note that despite that, nobody in the Enough is Enough campaign or any of the local authorities along the route is actually looking for a motorway standard road. What we're looking for is a dual carriageway standard road, which for all the economic and social reasons is so vital to ensure that our young people can be assured of the employment opportunities that are available in other parts of this island, and that, more importantly, if they choose, they can live, work and raise their families. But primarily, the reason we're looking for a dual carriageway standard road is to save lives. And in that context, the Irish government commitment to the A5 is absolutely essential. I wish it wasn't. I wish we had a British government that would actually live up to its responsibility. If they want jurisdiction over part of our country, then they should be providing the infrastructure that is necessary. But they're simply not going to do it. So the Irish government support and commitment is absolutely essential, but it's also essential not just for the people who happen to be in the 6 counties, but it's also essential for the all-Ireland economy. It's also essential to ensure that we come to a point where we have balanced regional development, and because the lives that are lost on the A5 are Irish lives from north and south, and therefore I think it's crucially important that the government outline, despite all of we know there's going to be other steps along the way and the legal process possibly isn't concluded yet, but it's important that the Irish government revert back to the St Andrews Agreement. And that's why I say the St Andrews Agreement, because the Minister in his opening, Minister Chambers, talked about a previous government commitment of €75 million. The St Andrews Agreement committed the Irish government to €400 million towards the A5 road development, which represented at that time 50% of the total cost. And that commitment is the one that needs to be reaffirmed. I have to say, and I thank Minister Carol McNeill for being here, and I thank Minister Chambers for his earlier contribution, but I have to ask, where's the Minister for Transport? Himself, and he may very well have other very important engagements tonight, but the government will be aware that there is a suggestion across many counties, my own included, that the Minister himself is opposed to the priorities that have been outlined in this motion, and that suggestion has been denied by government. Well, my answer to that is prove it, and it can be proved in the first instance by ensuring that the Letterkenny to Lifford section of the N2, there's a business case has been presented. That business case and the review of that business case should be a process of action rather than delayed. The Clontibber to the Border road scheme in my constituency was actually stalled last year. It wasn't stalled for legal reasons or for any bureaucracy. It was stalled because Minister Ryan's department refused to allocate the funding that was necessary for it. And the funding for this year was actually contingent on EU match funding. The Castleblaney to RD section of the N2 road scheme. This year, the allocation was 600 million. That has effectively stalled the project. Monaghan County Council are on the record of saying that they essentially cannot move to the next stage of process with the funding that has been allocated. That needs to change. If government are serious about supporting this motion, then they will fast-track their business case for the Letterkenny-Lifford road. They will provide funding this year for the RD Blaney road to proceed to the next stage, and they will ensure that the Contimmer to the Border scheme is prioritised without any further undue delay. And then they will commit without any equivocation that the Irish Exchequer funding will never be the cause for any further delay to the A5 project, because this is about lives, it's about economy, it's about the future of Ireland. For all of those reasons, there are valid rationale to support this motion and to take it to the next stage. But it's also about ensuring that a region that has been considered by jurisdictions in Dublin, in London and in Belfast as being at the end of something need to become part of the centre of decision making. These projects are in the National Development Plan. Funding for those projects has been withdrawn and given to projects that aren't in the National Development Plan. So now is the time to actually ensure that a whole-of-government approach is taken with the support of this whole House and actually see action. As the campaign slogan says, enough is enough. Now is the time for delivery.
Right. So now is the time to conclude. The motion regarding the A5 road upgrade, and the important question is that the motion be agreed to. Is that agreed? It's unanimously agreed. Thank you. Shin Rockamy the right the Kid piece of Gonoella, Shin Keshin Gun and Arelani Ko Unanimous.